president's Meet the Press interview this weekend, anchor Kristen Walker pressed him on whether he broke a promise of no new wars. Here's what he told her.
First of all, I didn't guarantee no war. Why would I have built the strongest military in the world? I built our military. I inherited a terrible military. We had no equipment. We had nothing. I built a tremendous military. When you say I promised, I didn't promise anything.
Well, keeping him honest, in the first weeks of his second term and months earlier during his re-election campaign, he often mentioned no new wars. Take a look.
And I was the first president in decades who started no new wars.
We are going to make sure there's no wars. We don't want to have wars. I call them endless wars.
I had no new wars. I had no wars.
With our victory in November, the years of war, weakness, and chaos will be over. I don't have wars. I had no wars.
And we had no wars under the Trump administration, and that's a great thing. And we won't have wars again. Make sure that Trump gets reelected president, and you're not going to have any more wars. No more wars, no more disruptions.
They said he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war.
Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Adam Smith, the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, as we said, according to an interview President Trump gave to Axios, he told Netanyahu, quote, "Bibi, you better be careful or you will be on your own very soon." Is it surprising to you to hear an American president speak like that or Trump speak to Netanyahu like that?
Well, I mean, I think we need to start talking with Israel, and we need to start working towards greater diplomacy. I mean, Israel continues to press and expand the war in Lebanon. I think that's incredibly dangerous. There is an opportunity to work with the Lebanese government that they ought to be seizing. So to the extent that the president is trying to legitimately constrain Israel and get them to see that they need partners for peace, not just enemies to attack, I think that would be a positive. But it's hard to know exactly what message Trump is sending, and certainly it's harder to know how Netanyahu is responding to it.
It does seem like the president continually cites a timeline of, this weekend we're close, a couple of days we're close, next week, now it's 2 weeks. Does it make sense to you that he continues to put a clock on this?
Well, look, Anderson, the president of the United States, in the middle of an incredibly dangerous situation as the war is expanding, so you see the Houthis are now involved and engaged, you've got the war in Lebanon, you've got Iran shooting back, and the president of the United States continues to babble nonsense, okay? When he says, in about a couple of weeks, Iran's ready, they're going to give us everything, blah, 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 that is literal nonsense. It's not based on anything whatsoever. He's been saying it for over 2 months now. I'd like the president to get serious about the situation that we're actually in instead of the one that he thinks in his own fantasy he has created. We're in a situation where Iran has effectively called our bluff. They've been able to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, massively disrupt the Middle East. They've been able to survive our attack. It is time to negotiate based on that reality, not on the fantasy that's in President Trump's head that somehow Iran is going to give us everything tomorrow or a week from now or 2 weeks from now.
What do you make of his denial that he promised no new wars?
Look, I mean, President Trump does not live in the factual world, never has. But part of his, appeal when he ran was he has no qualms about promising everything. Greatest economy in the world, everything's going to be great, we're going to have peace here, peace there, everything's great. And he presents it as if you don't have to understand it, I'm just so incredible that it's magically going to happen when I'm president. So, and I think to some extent he seems to believe that when he says it. But yeah, he absolutely promised no wars. And he believed that because of his strength, everyone would basically bow before him. That's not the way the world actually works, and certainly Iran is proving that. But clearly, yes, the president promised that if he was president, he promised specifically no war with Iran. And he has broken that promise. There's no doubt about it.
Where do you see this going? I mean, do you have any sense of how long or how this may end up?
There's no end in sight right now, like I said, unless Netanyahu and Trump change their basic premise here. Their basic premise is if we apply enough force, our enemies will collapse. That is not going to happen. That is very apparent. Now, Israel fighting back against Hamas, against Hezbollah, us fighting back against the Houthis in Iran, definitely backed them off and put them in a weaker position. That was the time before starting this war, shouldn't have started the war at all, that was the time to negotiate. But they went for everything. They said we can force basically complete surrender. And that was never going to be possible given the asymmetric advantages that Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas and these other groups had. They need to actively seek out partners for peace. Palestinians, Lebanese, others in the region. They're still fantasizing that if they apply enough force, they can bend everyone to their will. And I see no end to that right now. And I think we have to ramp up the pressure massively to get both the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu to change that approach.
Congressman Adam Smith, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Anderson.
Up next.